So my great-grandfather came to New York from Syria in the 1920s. So I don't have personally in my family relatives who came from Syria, although all of them did on every side. There are people in my community who immigrated as recently as 1990. So having grown up around these people is still something that's very relevant and alive in our daily life, I would say, and behaviors. There are some people in my family who in the beginning when I started using Arabic in my work, looked at it and were very confused because there's this sense in immigrant culture of wanting to divest from their original culture, and especially in America, like that whole, but we want to just be good Americans, we want to speak English right away, and because of that I lost my Arabic. I know that I'm probably the first generation in hundreds if not thousands of years in my family not to speak Arabic, so that's one result of that, but another was their own sense of wanting to distance themselves from themselves. So people reacted in the sense of like, why are you putting Arabic in your artwork? Nobody wants to see that, nobody wants to buy that, nobody wants to look at this, like what's the point? And trying to discourage me from it, or I had people saying off comments like, oh, we're waiting to see, like as I was training myself in Arabic calligraphy and just getting started and learning it, and I would be posting a lot of things on Instagram like, oh look the progress that I made today, or this like letter forming that I'm proud of, and I would have family like getting back to me, them saying things like, oh, we're waiting to see when you're going to join ISIS, like all the negative comments that, because those sentiments exist, is the very reason that I'm working on this at all, because I very much feel that if a select group of bad actors happen to use a script, that doesn't mean that they own it. It doesn't mean that they get exclusive rights over the usage of it, and the more we divest from it, the more we're giving it to them. So because of that, I'm working on it at all, but I didn't feel that people in my family really understood that. But then on the other hand, you get a lot of support from family and community. There was community members who were more recent immigrants that when I asked them for their advice on things, or primary sources, interviewing them for their stories and then showing them the finished artworks and gifting them artworks as like a thank you for helping me in this journey, a lot of them were very gratified and thankful and excited to see their stories and their personal life represented in art, because again, it's not something that was usual for this community and this story.
So Jerusalem must have been a natural home for the sort of hybridization in your work of classic and contemporary and language and Arabic and Hebrew.
Yeah, I think that's part of the culture of this city, which is so multi-layered and has so much heritage in it and people from every Edah. And at the same time, Jerusalem is in a moment now in Israel, really, where they're at once looking back and taking ownership of people's cultural heritage and being proud of it, especially Mizrahim. And then at the same time looking to the future and trying to modernize, and they're cleaning up, and they want to, like building their light rail, all these constructions. They're moving ahead as they're looking back in a way that I'm trying to do with my work as well. So it is a very natural synthesis, and I've always found that my work had a very good reception here, which made it really easy to make the decision to come and live and work in the city. I don't think that there's a way to pin down Jewish art, almost in the sense that it's very hard to define Jewish history in a vacuum on its own, because Jewish history is the history of the world, because Jews have been spread out in diaspora for thousands of years throughout the whole world. So the way that our history is the history of our host country, or the history of the whole world, so too our art. Like somebody came and looked at this work in progress today and said, oh, it looks like graffiti. And I'm like, yeah, because I was raised in Brooklyn and I grew up around that stuff, so that's going to come out in my art. Is graffiti and street writing Jewish? No. But am I a Jewish person creating art? Yes. So like, is it Jewish now? I don't know. I couldn't say. I don't know if it's necessarily useful to have a definition of Jewish art anyway. Like, do Spanish people be like, what is Spanish art? Or are they just like, I'm a Spanish person, I'm making art? When you pinpoint something and put it in a specific box and define it that way, you're also limiting it. So maybe it's better if it is an open question, because it gives more option for things to be included, or for the definition to morph and change, and for new ideas to breathe life into the whole question. It's almost better to not have it strictly defined. For me, religion is that way too. Like, it's not the very modern concept and construct of orthodoxy, reform, conservative, all the labels that people will put for what defines your religion and how do you define your religion to yourself. Like, when you have to answer those questions, it also puts you in a box. So I don't think it's useful, and I don't think it's realistic with religion or with art. We're all individual.